Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's April 1st. This is the Stephen D. Kelly Show. My name is Stephen D. Kelly. This is Truth Cat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. Now, I know you expect that if I am doing an April Fool's show, that it must be something sarcastic and perhaps even the opposite of what I'm actually trying to say. But the reality is that I thought about it and I realized that anything I can say can be misconstrued, so I need to be careful not to say anything fallacious at any time. I got a corn vendor walking by. If you hear the little squeaky horn, that's what that is. That's ghetto. That's barrio life, okay? We have corn vendors and chicharron vendors and you name it. Shaved ice vendors. Now, so the universe has handed me something better because so many people are being made fools of and being played for fools on a daily basis. Speaking of fools. So what better way to celebrate April Fool's Day than to talk about one of the biggest clowns there is, and that is Charlie Ward. Now, I don't usually devote my precious time to, let's just say, exposing. I don't want to say attacking. Some people would say bashing. Why are you bashing Charlie Ward? But, you know, here's the thing. When I am faced with extreme evil, I'm kind of shocked. It takes me back a little bit. I'm just not used to it. I'm not. The last time I saw that was when I was going to debate the vice president of Raytheon, and when I found out just how bad he was, I had to catch my breath. Well, the same thing happened with this guy here. It's really much worse than I thought. And what happened was I noticed that my little Telegram group, of course, was struggling to keep people, and people are still leaving. And, of course, this is because of the intransigence of the Trump supporters. But then I noticed that this Charlie Ward group had something like 300,000 or 30,000 or some ridiculous number of people, and he was getting all these ridiculous amount of hits and what have you. And I thought, wait a minute, something's not right here. Now, I'm used to a bunch of dummies coming around, and everyone knows that I think that 99% of everyone out there, and even more, I'm probably being generous when I say 99%. I want to say 99.9% of the people out there in this so-called alternative media truth business are full of shit. There I go. But I try to be somewhat forgiving. And here's the thing. The Charlies, as I say, you know, Charlie Freak, I found out about him just recently from when I was doing the show with Billy Watson over there in Scotland. And because of the Charlie Freak, I heard about him working with Charlie Ward. I thought, okay, we got these couple Charlies. And I'm used to losers like Kent Dunn and people who'd come out of nowhere and start talking BS and are just shills, you know, the Benjamin Fulfords of the world and stuff like that. So when I saw Charlie Freak, of course, I thought, well, okay, here's this loser that lives in Mexico that looks like a junkie. And I thought, well, okay, Charlie Ward, he's probably just another idiot like Kent Dunn or one of these other fools that gets a little YouTube channel going and whatever. But no, there was something different about this guy. When I find out he's actually wealthy, well, the stuff I found out is really ugly. And I'm going to say things about him tonight that no one else has said before. And I'm even going to tell you right now that if this video, once it goes up on YouTube, and of course I'm going to be putting it up on alternative networks, but once it goes up, expect it to be attacked by the snowflakes that support Charlie Ward. They're going to be so upset that this fake hero of theirs, or this whatever he pretends to be, when they hear what I say, it's going to be shocking. And I think they're going to probably report my video for being bullying, which is interesting because I never got that so bad with the Obama people, and I attacked Obama ruthlessly and Hillary ruthlessly. But now with Trump and his supporters, it's a whole nother ball game. So I'm going to start out with saying that if you go to do a search on this guy, Charlie Ward, he spells his name Charlie as opposed to with a Y or EY. He calls himself Dr. Charlie Ward. We're going to talk about that. He's not a doctor. He's never been a doctor. It's absolute bullshit. Now, before I even dove into this, I knew the guy was a bullshit artist and a con man because he had been saying horrendous crap about tunnels being cleared, telling people that there was no children left under the Getty, and never mentioning the Getty out in the open, and saying everything counter to what I was saying, and filling the entire Trump nation with bullshit that somehow Donald Trump was still in control, was going to take over, and military was going to take charge, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is one of the guys that's most responsible, beyond characters like Lin Wood, et cetera, for generating absolute bullshit that Trump followers have swallowed. And he has set many dates and timetables for grand events that never took place, and has always managed to find an excuse for why this didn't happen or that didn't happen. But we're going to study it a little bit more. A lot of people suggested that he's just some sort of COINTEL shill. The reality is much, much worse. So like I said, we're going to go to the Charlie Ward Show page. This is his .com. It's drcharliewood.com. And it has a home, about me, my videos, my stuff, join the club, member login, and help. And of course, as I mentioned, it says Dr. Charlie Wood. So about me, this is what he says. Hi, I'm Charlie Ward. I was born on the 8th of June in 1960 in Ipswich, England. Now, for those of you that want to, I'm going to throw this out right away. I ran his numbers. And for someone that was born on the 8th of June of 1960, that makes him a 30, otherwise known as a 303, which means he is pure 3. Now, 3s can be creative, but for the most part, they're all about the party, and sex. Fun people, those 3s. He was born and brought up in a religious cult called the Plymouth Brethren, or some religious people refer to it as the Exclusive Brethren. I had an arranged marriage at the age of 18 years old and had 3 children by the age of 22 years old. I decided to leave the cult at age 23, 1983, and leave my wife and 3 children behind. Now, remember, 23 is when he left this cult. This is going to be important because I'm going to talk about events and things that he did after he left this cult. And I also want to explain to you about this cult because it's not as bad as it would seem, but it's really a wild story. Now remember, this is his bio. This is what he thinks is important. That's my cat coughing up. He's an old kitty. They only allowed me to have controlled visits for 5 years. I'm sorry, I don't have any violin music in the background, but you get the idea. I finally managed to persuade my wife to come out with the children in 1988. He doesn't say what that means, come out with the children, but trust me, it was not where she was. We realized sadly that we only had religion in common, and our marriage ended. So in other words, as soon as he was able to get her to bring the kids to him, he was able to get rid of her and keep the kids. We realized sadly that we only had religion. I left the UK and worked in Spain and have remained here ever since, and worked in South Africa, Thailand, Singapore, and China during the past years. And we're going to show he worked in a lot more countries than that. I worked in the hotel and shared ownership business. Okay, shared ownership business, that means timeshare, okay? He's a timeshare salesman for 30 years. Obviously, he did a lot more than that in 30 years, and retired from the mainstream work in 2005. I now use the contacts that I built up over the past 40 years to run my current business, which is moving physical currency for many high net worth individuals and governments worldwide. Let me rephrase that. That means ultra rich and dirty government officials. I have a wife called Nursel, Turkish, as if that matters, and 4 children. Lee, who died in 2009 when he drove his Lamborghini off a cliff, aged 27. Glenn, Carla, and Justin. I have 4 grandchildren, Hugo, Alexandro, Lee, and Hartley. Then after that, he has his wedding video. Okay? So this is what you're supposed to see about him. He's got a little sob story about how this nasty cult, he had to leave his wife and children at the tender age of 23, and how he moved to Spain, and how he managed to coerce his wife to leave the cult and bring the children to him, and then subsequently leave her, and then only have controlled visits, this controlled visits bullshit. So we're supposed to feel sorry for him. Oh, you poor guy, you suffered. Now, I don't know about you, but come on, listen. A timeshare salesman is like a notch below a used car salesman. Okay? It's scum. So this is what he says in port. And of course, again, his son that died. He doesn't mention that his son died driving a $150,000 Lamborghini off a cliff in Spain overlooking a golf course. He doesn't mention that. But anyway, we'll talk about these things. Okay, so this is what he says about himself. So right away, you're supposed to think that he was in this religious cult, and somehow because of the word cult is being used, it's a bad thing. But he escaped at this tender young age. He had to lose his wife and kids and abandon them and managed to, after so many years, whatever he did. But somehow we're supposed to feel bad about that, and we're supposed to think that this church was bad. So we need to talk about his church. But again, if you try to look up information about Charlie Ward, one of the first things you're going to notice is that there's another Charlie Ward out there who is a famous football player, an NFL player who's also a Heisman Trophy winner, who is actually a notable, respectable man. And fortunately, he's the one that gets most of the recognition on Google when you do a Google search. So it's really hard to find Charlie Ward unless you find pictures, because obviously you can find his fucking face, all over the place. So once you zero in on his face, you can zero in on his pages. But as far as information about the guy, there's no Wikipedia, there's no information other than his book, which you can get for $15 US, something like 10 pounds, I think, or 10 euros. Well, if you go to his webpage, they've even disabled the right click, the right mouse button, so that you can't copy and paste anything. It's all about the money. So let's talk about Charlie Ward. Once again, like I said, he was born in 1960, but let's talk about this church a little bit. Okay, the church he belonged to was called the Plymouth Brethren, or as he says, also called the Exclusive Brethren. Now, the thing about this particular church is what they really do that considers them a cult is that they do not believe in having clergy. They're basically a group of people that believe that Christ's intention was that there shouldn't be a power structure and that the Bible should be all you need to conduct your prayer and to learn what you need to learn to worship. So what they would do is the members would pick somebody, and this person, they would rotate the person that they would pick, and that person would be designated the elder, and the elder would basically read the Bible for the rest of them. And this is how it worked. Now, if you ask me, that doesn't sound heinous. That doesn't sound like a sex cult or anything of that nature. But we will run into some sex cults up later on. But this particular so-called cult seems to be a very wholesome Christian, extremely conservative Christian congregation, but at the same time a pure Christian congregation and not one stuck on dogma and human interpretation of Scripture, rather leaving the interpretation of the Scripture up to the person listening to the Scripture being read. So all in all, I don't see how that is considered a cult. But one thing that is interesting, and that is that Aleister Crowley was also involved with this particular church. If you don't know who Aleister Crowley is, he's probably one of the more famous Satanists of our era. But he was born October 12th, 1875, I should do his numbers, into a very strict Plymouth Brethren family. So right away, my first inclination was to think that somehow this cult, so-called cult, instilled upon Aleister Crowley as well as Charlie Ward some sort of a satanic upbringing. Whereas the actual opposite is the truth. The truth is that these were actually very wholesome, very wonderful, probably environments to grow up in from a Christian standpoint. But what did Charlie Ward do when he left? He said that he went in the opposite direction. The opposite direction. So in other words, he went evil. He went dark. He went satanic. And if you look at Aleister Crowley, obviously Aleister Crowley was also a person who clearly went in the opposite direction. So there's an interesting little parallel right there. But for the most part, I want to say that I suspect that this Plymouth Brethren is not the problem here. I think it was Charlie that was the problem. So we're going to learn about his friends that he's holding and the people that the people that he's connected to that would apparently have some sort of control over him. We're going to look at his history of how he came out of nowhere, basically, at least as far as the Trump situation is concerned and the QAnon situation is concerned. And I think the thing that I really want you to realize is that for whatever reason, he seems to have no restrictions. He seems to have the ability to gain followers and go viral when everyone else is being shut down. So we really need to look hard at this guy. Now, one of the biggest things that he does, of course, is he says these ridiculous things. And usually he'll say something like there was going to be a military takeover by a certain date. And, of course, this date comes and goes. So if we look at some of his most ridiculous quotes, he said, there will be a legitimate military government as of January 20th, 2021. Now, obviously, I don't see that's going to work. He said by February 5th, they would take over all TV, radio, newspaper, including in Europe. Obviously, that didn't happen. Where does this information come from? Quote unquote, a very, very good source that's working in high office. This is one of the things that he likes to say. When he first started out his YouTube page, and you got to really again wonder, because here's a guy that has millions of dollars, so much money that his son could drive a $150,000 Lamborghini off a cliff. This should tell you something. When everyone else is getting shut down, how does he go viral? When he just started his YouTube page, it was only, well, let's say in 2020, April 23rd, when his stuff was brand new, he was putting up videos, and he had maybe 60-something views, under 100 views for his videos. And yet, when he debuted, he had a vodka sponsor. He had a vodka distributor sponsoring, Nero Vodka sponsoring his program. Why? The guy is already wealthy. It doesn't cost that much money to put up a silly YouTube channel and to sit in front of a camera and try to act cheeky, but yet he had a sponsor. He was doing commercials before he even had 100 viewers or 100 people watching his stuff. I do want to give credit. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to give you tonight, obviously I got off the internet. And again, I'm just going to say that there's so much information about this Charlie Ward guy, dirty, dirty stuff. It's amazing to me that none of you have picked up on it yet. I'm going to try to connect dots that I don't believe that you guys haven't already done. One of the most crazy things about his YouTube videos, the videos he'd put up, and if anybody does put up videos on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about, but he clicks the for children. All of his videos are considered for children. Now, typically, content providers such as ours, we don't do that. Unless we are doing some entertainment type of thing, content for children specifically, we don't do that because you can get in all kinds of trouble for doing that. But he is doing that. Now, remember, Charlie Ward, QAnon, he's supposed to be talking about, pedophilia, saving children from sex offenders, all of this sort of thing, secret governments, what have you, conspiracies. And yet somehow this content is for children. Every single video he's got his videos clicked for children. Now, I don't know. Maybe that's something I need to try out. Maybe that's why he went viral, because he's got a bunch of children watching his stuff. Could be, but that's really wild. Now, here's the other thing that's really kind of wild is that if you did look at his videos, you'll notice that in the early stages, he had all kinds of short little videos of his son Justin dancing ballet. Okay, now that's just a little wild, but what I don't understand is that when you are doing anything public like this, especially on Facebook, YouTube, etc., I'm a father. I have 6 children, and I would never, ever think of ever having a picture of one of my children, especially a baby picture or something of them when they're pre-adolescent, anywhere. And yet this guy is using it to, generate some sort of good feeling with the audience. And at the same time, this is the sort of the behavior that a pedophile would do. And this is certainly the type of content that would appeal to a pedophile. I mean, come on, we're talking a little 9-10-year-old boy dancing ballet in tights. This is the sort of content he had on his page. So that, if anything, that's just creepy. It should be obvious that there's something wrong there. I saw Ola Damigard on one of his videos. I got to say, I was very disappointed with Ola Damigard when I saw that. The guy's money, let me try to explain to you. I just want to talk about his money moving around. He would basically take private jets loaded up with cash, millions of dollars, upwards of $1 billion, and his service provided door-to-door delivery anywhere in the world, worldwide, door-to-door delivery. And it was billed as if some billionaire might be on vacation and say, oh, I don't know, Barbados, and he would fly a pallet of cash to any location for that client. This was his business. You're going to see, and this should be a red flag for anybody, that when you have an individual flying all over the world, moving huge amounts of unaccounted for cash, that more than likely they're moving things other than cash. Billionaires also have other things they consider valuable. The ultra-elite, wealthy people of the world also have other things they consider valuable. Now remember, here is a man that made his wealth catering to the ultra-elite, the enemy, and corrupt government officials. I think it goes without saying that they were corrupt if they were moving huge amounts of cash on a private jet. And Charlie will be the first one to say that, of course, there is such a thing as dirty money, but he likes to say there's also clean money. He doesn't say that he didn't move dirty money. He just claims that there is such a thing as clean money. He also says he made a lot of money doing oil deals, which is interesting because that seems sort of reminiscent of Getty. Now, he doesn't talk about how these oil deals happen. He doesn't talk about any of how this stuff is set up, but we're going to find out his network, his friends that we'll get to, are the ones that made all this possible. He wasn't just some lucky guy that through the sheer brain power he was able to find himself in these positions where he would have these lucrative businesses. Obviously, moving private plane loads full of cash across the world back and forth, that is not a normal thing, and you can't even begin to write that off and suggest that it's okay. You have to be incredibly naive not to see what's going on here. He also says he spent 25 years in the hotel leisure in Europe and Asia. Now, as we know, a good portion of this was selling timeshares. Now, you're going to see also some of his close friends are also still in that business, and you'll see just how crooked those people are very soon. One of the other things he did, part of his business, was he installed and maintained the CCTV, closed-circuit TV cameras, and the control systems in all United Kingdom prisons. And by his own count, that's 147 prisons. Now, how did Charlie, a timeshare salesman, walk into a deal like that? Well, once again, his connections, his royalty connections, his government connections, we'll talk about that. These are the same connections he claims are, well, very, very good sources, high up there and well placed. Now, if you ask me, anybody that was given access to, this is a man that actually traveled to every single one of these prisons to deal with these systems. And I'm not assuming that he's a technician or a engineer of any sort, but I suspect that he was the highest ranking representative to do this. And I'm also going to suggest that anybody that had this much exposure to the prison system in the UK probably also had exposure to systems that he's not talking about in bunkers and other government places that needed restricted access that are, say, someplace that might have child sex slaves. I'm going to flat out show you tonight that this fucker Charlie is a fucking pedo, a money launderer, and a human trafficker, okay? On top of being a Satanist. All right, we'll get to that. Now, when he was about 20 or 22, he claims that he accidentally clicked the box on his driver's license application for doctor. And ever since then, he's been calling himself doctor. You've probably heard a few people call me doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor. I do not use doctor in my letterhead. I do not introduce myself as Dr. Stephen Kelly, unlike Charlie Ward, who's got it flat out there. Dr. Charlie Ward is bullshit. He's never been a fucking doctor. He took an online degree only recently because he was tired of people questioning him about why he still continues to call himself doctor when he is neither a PhD or a medical doctor. So, online degree. Remember, this is a man that lives in Spain that frequents Barbados. I suppose it was a Barbados doctorate, perhaps? A mail-order diploma? He calls it a course, but as soon as he tells you that he took this online degree course or he achieved this online degree. He doesn't tell you what that is. Is that a bachelor's? Are you going to tell me that you took an online PhD, course, doctorate? Give me a break. And he says, but nobody recognizes that as legitimate. No, we don't recognize that as legitimate. So why are you using it? You're not a doctor. Why are you calling yourself doctor? You're a fraud from the very beginning. Now, these prisons, again, these 147 prisons, he spent 3 years doing it. The company that he worked for was called Sensomatic. Now, if anybody wants to look that up, I'm assuming they were in the UK. But you got to wonder, once again, how does this basically, if you ask him how he got this contract, he'll give you some bullshit story about how he was out knocking on doors in some crummy Pakistani neighborhood. Of course, he's got to get all racial and tell you how it was this horrible Pakistani neighborhood with these cheap people who never give you any money, as if he's just some peddler. But one of the doors he knocked on just happened to be the governor of prisons, okay, who decided to give Charlie the whirlwind tour of everything involved with prisons, and somehow Charlie was able to take that information and turn it into this contract to install the surveillance and the entry hardware, the biometrics, whatever it is they're using to access every single prison in the UK, all 147 prisons, probably including their bunkers. How did that happen? How did that happen? Now, if you ask me, that's one of the first hints that we're talking NSA here, okay? Now, Charlie will say CIA, and people will say, well, wait a minute, Charlie's not an American. He's a British citizen who lives in Spain. How could he have anything to do with the CIA or the NSA? Because it's not a damn American organization. It's a multinational criminal organization that has nothing to do with the United States. And even if it did, they would have no problem using somebody like this as one of their assets. And clearly, he is one of their assets. And clearly, somebody tapped on his shoulder and said, guess what? You're going to be the face of Q. You're going to be the face of Rescue the Children. You're going to be the face of all the idiots that are out there following this disgraced president. He said, yes, sir, boss. Let me just finish licking your rear end. Now, he calls the treatment that he got over there at the Plymouth Brethren indoctrination. Now bear in mind, we're talking about a pretty wholesome Christian environment, but they're calling it indoctrination. So in other words, from the get-go, he wants you to think that whatever it was that he was exposed to for his first 23 years, that somehow this was bad and it was necessary for him to escape and abandon his family like a big asshole. Well, we're supposed to think that was a bad thing. He says it's somewhat like a Baptist church. I don't really think so. I would think Baptist maybe is being somewhat conservative, but I think this, again, is something probably different than that. But again, you can't help draw the comparisons with him right away to Aleister Crowley and the route he went. He has all these crazy stories about his mother, which never seem to fit. They're always seeming to bounce around. He calls her either a dentist, a farmer's wife, or an alcoholic. Now, I suppose there's no reason why a farmer's wife can't become a dentist and develop a drinking habit, but obviously he's suggesting that you're supposed to feel sorry for him because somehow his mother was not a very good person because she drank and she was a farmer. He's obviously got disdain for her if he calls her a farmer's wife, as if that's suggesting that she's somehow lowly. And I don't know what's wrong with being a dentist. That certainly seems to be a professional trait worthy of something to be proud of. But she's an alcoholic. So clearly having an alcoholic mother who was a supposed farmer's wife that he's not proud of could have had something to do with his self-esteem. I would suspect, and probably his desire to screw over other people to get what he wants. Now, again, one of the things that he did that really made him big, at least that broke him from getting 62 views on a video to actually getting like thousands of views, is when he started pushing the fake King John III, Gregory Hallett. He had nothing going on until he started pushing that. Now, why did he start pushing this fake king? What makes this guy fake? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about why he started doing it. But the point is before he started pushing this fake king person, he had no viewers. For next thing you know, he's going from 100 1,000, 5,000, 8,000, up to 30,000 viewers just like that because of this Gregory Howlett bullshit. He was the one pushing this crap. He basically came out and said that this was the future king, the rightful king of England, and pushed that shit hardcore. There's all sorts of videos about that. Now, needless to say, that was proved to be false, and he had to retract all of it. But the way he did it, again, was in true Charlie Ward style. He acted like he never said it. It was all bullshit, and then somehow he was the victim. But again, what's important is the motives for why he would be doing it, and who benefits from having this Gregory Howlett person assuming any sort of royal role. It turns out it was one of his best friends, a guy we're going to talk about named Kidd. One of his best friends. What's his name? Jack Kidd. He's got two really big friends that we're going to talk about. One of them is Jack Kidd, of course. Another one is named David Mahoney. Both of these guys are actually involved in this conspiracy, if you will, to promote this fake king. Now, Charlie Ward even went so far as to have a fundraiser. He started a fundraiser, a GoFundMe campaign or something of this nature for this Gregory Howlett person. But at the end of it all, he claimed that he knew all along this guy was a fake, which is obviously bullshit. You know, one thing I should mention here really quick that I didn't throw out there. Yeah, Charlie's mother was an alcoholic, probably. And here's the thing. The children of alcoholics usually grow up to be alcoholics too. And you know what? Charlie's an alcoholic. It's really obvious. If you look at his videos, remember I said how he had the vodka company sponsoring his video? Why do you think he had a vodka company sponsoring his video? He was drinking the vodka during the video. He was sloshed. He was fucked up. Now, there's plenty of video of him out there with his friends partying in various tropical locations, either Barbados or Spain or somebody's resort. And these guys are incredibly wealthy, especially his friend Kidd. But we'll talk about David Mahoney first. Now, David Mahoney is his so-called best friend. He also is in Spain, but he promotes Spanish real estate. He's registered as a real estate developer in Spain, but a lot of the real estate that he puts up or develops is scam stuff. Like, for instance, this guy has this thing called Marbella Estates. And you'll notice if you look at Charlie Ward's wedding photos and various different things that there will be Marbella watermarks. There will be Marbella at the bottom of the image. And that's usually he's trying to promote the beauty of these, whatever it is, this estate. He's using his wedding as a promotional for this stuff. But the point is that if you do any research whatsoever on David Mahoney or this Marbella Estates, you're going to find out that it's a complete and utter scam. And there's hundreds of people out there that have put up as much as $30,000 to try to get into these so-called Marbella Estates to find out that it was either non-existent swampland or that they could never get their money and they could never reach this Mahoney person. So if you go to, say, any of the scam awareness sites, such as Scam Exposure, there's quite a few of them out there, different sites, but every one of them will be loaded with reports of how this David Mahoney person screwed them out of huge amounts of money selling this land in Brazil. One of the things that's interesting, though, if you look at his company, is that a lot of the principals are actually Swedish. I was looking for, obviously, other stuff like Russian mafia, but it's interesting that a lot of these guys do speak Russian. Now, if you look at the principals for the company that this guy has, they will all speak Russian, which is interesting because we know that Donald Trump took a lot of money from the Russians and used it for the purposes of money laundering. And, of course, this is exactly what these guys are involved in, so it's the same thing. So this Mahoney guy is an ultimate sleazebag, and, of course, Charlie is cut of the same cloth. You got to remember, the bulk of Charlie's career was spent in doing the same thing that this guy Mahoney is doing right here, selling bullshit real estate and calling it partial ownership or something like that. He was a timeshare salesman. How he got to flying private jets around, who knows? But we'll get to that. His other friend that's really kind of important that we really want to focus on is this Jack Kidd guy. Now, Jack Kidd who is somewhat of, I suspect, a little bit younger than Charlie. Charlie's about 60 right now. He's a couple years younger than me. He was born in 1960. This guy, Jack Kidd, he's a polo player, and he has some very famous siblings. Now, before I go to his siblings, I'm going to mention that his grandfather is one Baron Beaverbrook. Now, Baron Beaverbrook is sort of like a Rupert Maxwell, kind of like a non-Jewish Rupert Maxwell, I think, but meaning that he was a newspaper person. He was big in the newspaper business, but he was also a backroom influencer of government people, politicians. Okay, so this is very important. He was also, and this is even more important, the Minister of Propaganda under Winston Churchill. Okay, so Jack Kidd, the best buddy of this guy here, is the grandson of the Minister of Propaganda. All right, so that means that right away they're professional liars that got in their blood. Now let's look at some of his siblings, because this is even more important. He has one sibling called Jody Kidd, who apparently is some sort of a socialite. She's very famous, and people talk about her quite a bit. Apparently, she's all over she's kind of like Paris Hilton, I guess, over there. You know, royalty that they like to follow over there, celebrity royalty. And Jack is the one, he's sort of like the black sheep, because the tabloids like to make fun of him and suggest that he's somehow involved in the QAnon conspiracy, which believes that cabal of Satanists are running the world, eating children and all this sort of thing, which is interesting. They make fun of that. But one of his sisters, his other sister, is called Gemma Kidd, Jemma. Now, Gemma Kidd actually is quite powerful of all the various connections here. And we're going to suggest that Charlie, his real source of power, his real source to the roots of power, are going through Jack to his sister Gemma. Now, what makes Gemma so important? Well, other than being the fact that she's another one of these celebrity aristocrat royalty brats, she's also the owner of a makeup company. And you think, okay, what's the name of this makeup company? It's called Gemma Kidd Makeup Limited. Oh, she's married to a count, too. I don't know who the count is she's married to. But anyway, now, between you and me, have you ever heard of Gemma Kidd Makeup Limited? Does it even sound like a fashionable brand that you would purchase? Anyway, well, the thing is that this makeup company isn't any old makeup company. What makes it special? Well, let's see here. Let's look at the shareholders. I have a list of some of the shareholders of this makeup company. Let's start with the number one shareholder. Well, of course, the number one shareholder is Gemma. All right. So Jack Kidd's sister, Gemma, is the number one shareholder of this company. Who's number two? Lord Rothschild. Oh, how about that? These are just the shareholders now, bear in mind. Let's see. Anyone else important after that? Well, let's see. I've got a Mark Cochran, David Rich Jones, Peter Dubens, Timothy Watson. No, I'd say having Lord Nathan Rothschild as your number two investor in your company is a little bit of a clue that there's something going on here. All right, let's look at the list of the directors of the company. Who's the number one director of the company? Well, let's see. That would be Gemma. Who's the number two director of the company? Ghislaine Maxwell. Let me repeat that. Ghislaine Maxwell is the number two director of Gemma's company. Now, I think this should tell you a little bit of something right here. And of course, for the people who are living under a rock, Ghislaine Maxwell is the woman who is the Mossad agent. There it is. Who also probably controlled Jeffrey Epstein and was responsible for bringing him children. And guess what? Charlie's involved. We'll get to that. So suffice it to say that Ghislaine Maxwell is pure evil and we know it. And even though she's in jail right now facing charges of human trafficking, the reality is that her crimes are much worse than just human trafficking. There's also huge money laundering, extortion, and spying by a foreign government against the United States. These should also be mentioned in her trial, but of course it won't. Where is this makeup company located? Where does Gemma Kidd live? Where does Jack Kidd live? Barbados, West Indies. Where is the company registered? St. James, Barbados. Sound familiar? St. James. What was Epstein's Island called? Little St. James. The Kidd family has a resort in Barbados. Now, if you don't know where Barbados is, it's a nice little island northwest of Venezuela, off the coast. That's South America, people. It's well south of the Bahamas, but it's along that chain of islands behind Haiti, Dominican Republic, all that sort of thing. But what is Barbados famous for? Money laundering, shell companies. So what can we derive just from that information there? Gemma Kidd Makeup Limited is a shell company set up for the purpose of money laundering. Why else would we have Baron Rothschild as a major stockholder? Why else would we have Ghislaine Maxwell as a director, a woman who was responsible for Mossad, extortion, money laundering operations, who worked for Jeffrey Epstein, responsible for moving trillions of dollars in money laundering operations? And now we have Charlie Ward, who admits to moving billions of dollars secretly on private planes from any given destination in the world to any other given destination of the world. But he will come out and tell you right away if you ask him, no, I did not fly to the Bahamas. Give me a fucking break. You're hooked up to the Kidd family. You move money. You're connected to Barbados. You're connected to Ghislaine Maxwell. You're connected to Epstein. You're in a private plane capable of moving human cargo as well as cash. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the Kidd family is definitely part of the royal family, one way or another. And they are very close to the Rothschild family. There's many pictures of Nathan Rothschild hanging out with Jack Kidd, the best friend of Charlie Ward. If that isn't enough, I really don't know what to tell you. But if you look at any of the Charlie Ward interviews, you're going to notice that he parrots. He has shills, a group of shills on his page. And I'm going to give kudos to Jordan Sather right now just for coming out recently and putting a list of all the shills out there because, like I said, I try to ignore these bastards as much as possible. And unfortunately, almost everybody out there, so many of them, are shills. And you're going to notice they all have a little clique. They stick together, and Charlie Ward is like the granddaddy of all of them. They are trying to make him into a father figure. Now, before I move on, I just want to go back to this fake king business here real quick, because you got to think for a second, why did they decide they needed a fake king? What did this so-called royalty, this Kidd guy, Jack Kidd, what did he have to gain from promoting this? All of Charlie's friends, these three people I talked about, were all involved in promoting this fake king business. Why? If you've ever watched one of Charlie's interviews, you'll notice that whenever anybody says anything on the show, he nods his head, like as if to suggest that this word's coming out of the mouth of the person or something that he already knew. And he knows it so strongly that he can't hold back, and he has to nod his head to agree. Oh, yeah, oh, right, that's right, I knew that. And when after the other person speaks, what does he do? He repeats what they say. He parrots it. He acts like he already knew everything. Now, how does he handle the people that say anything negative, that ask him questions, that challenge him? For the most part, he ignores them. He will keep a somewhat polite, positive exterior. He's got this warm, sugary, fuzzy, lovable approach to this image that he's trying to convey. But if you challenge him, he'll just block you, he'll ignore you, but he can be rude also. And not only that, he will outright intimidate you and threaten you. He's been recorded as suggesting that he's always has the option of sending someone over to your house if he doesn't like you. Now, when everybody got shut down on YouTube, I know I did. I know a lot of people did. Of course, I created a new page, and I told a lot of you to mirror my account in different pages. But Charlie, he didn't get shut down on YouTube. First of all, remember, Charlie didn't even have hardly any views on his YouTube. And what did he have? He had, him sitting in front of a camera, which is interesting because a lot of my videos, they don't involve me sitting in front of a camera. It's obviously just audio. But he started deleting his own videos, and he started warning people that he was being censored, that he needed to set up an alternative, and he created his own page, this Charlie Ward Show page, and he created what he called the Insiders Club. You have to join this club. You have to become a member to log in. You get the daily Charlie updates. We'll go over how much that costs. But his Insiders Club, basically, of course, he's using British money. It's 11 pounds or 11 euros a month, 99 euros a year. And he'll tell you that the profit from this goes to his MyPatriotsNetwork.com, another shell company. And supposedly this MyPatriotsNetwork.com, the purpose of that is for helping spread the truth. This is he has some sort of strange thing that he uses when he says that. But here's an example. Let's say he does these Zoom call meetings every Sunday. Now, he gets about 2,000 calls. 2,000 people on any given Sunday might join this. And for the money that he's making in American money, that comes out to about, a little under $5,000 every Saturday. Now, bear in mind, first of all, that's a pretty damn good chunk for a little bit of work on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, I can't even fathom what I could do with that money. Remember, I'm working under complete poverty compared to this guy. I mean, I am operating under poverty. This guy's just ridiculously well funded. So bear in mind, he does not need that money, but he's taking that much money. Well, that's a month. He's taking that in a month. But remember, he doesn't need that. He likes to put a little white rabbit up in the corner of his background behind his head. And he's suggesting that he is the white rabbit. He is some sort of Q source. He has a little Q behind his head sometimes, too. He wants people to think that he's some sort of insider, that he's actually claiming to be Q or something beyond just being a Q insider. But here's the thing about this man. Now, remember, other than having video of his prepubescent son dancing in tights in front of the camera on many, many videos, he really portrays himself, at least now, as a savior of children, somebody that's fighting pedophilia, and someone close to Jesus. Now, the truth is the exact opposite. The truth is the man is a human trafficker. And he will admit, he will say, and he has admitted on video, on camera, it's out there right now, that when he was 25 years old, this is 3 years after he left his wife and 3 children at the evil Christian cult, that he liked to go into London at the BBC and go to the Top of the Pops, which was, of course, a music event on TV. And because of his ability to get in, or his connections, as he says. What were his connections again? Remember, they were royal connections, and the real connections were his connections to Jimmy Savile, one of the biggest pedophiles the world has ever seen. Anyway, Jimmy Savile would let him into the Top of the Pops every week or whatever it was, as long as he provided 5 to 10 young girls. And Charlie Ward will tell you, at least he did once before he tried to backtrack, that not all of them were adults. They were underage. In one day, he would bring 5 to 10 young girls to Jimmy Savile. He admits that. And he would warn these girls, remember, this is a 25-year-old, he would warn them and say, he's going to want to shag you. So he thought that would be okay. And he said, quote, this is Charlie, he says, quote, a lot of these girls were underage. And Charlie also said, quote, in the 80s, the moral compass was out of sync. We didn't think anything of it. Now, who is we? Him or the little girls he was pimping to the other guy that had no moral compass, Jimmy Savile. Now remember, he's 25. Now, first of all, why did he even want to be on Top of the Pops? Why did he need to go there that often? Is it because he was a young man fresh out of cult and he was feeling his oats and wanted to have his taste of all the illicit, negative, evil that he could get his hands on? So he thought nothing of bringing 10 underage girls to be molested by Jimmy Savile just so that he could get into Top of the Pops? You don't think he was getting a little bit more than maybe, a chance to go on a dance show? I think maybe he was getting a little bit more. I think he was pimping. I think he was a human trafficker. And I think at the early age of 25, this was his first experience at human trafficking. Well, right away, that's as sleazy as all hell. Now, if you look at some of his more recent videos, when confronted about this issue of providing women to Jimmy Savile, he will now very angrily state that when he was doing this, he was 25, as well as the girls that he was bringing with him. He tried to suggest now that all of the young girls that came with him to Top of the Pops were now in the range of his own age, which was 25, well above the age of adult. So this is obvious bullshit, because for whatever reason, either stupidity, bravado, ego, or some deranged sense of lack of moral compass, he admitted to doing this. And we don't know how many girls he did this for. We don't know how many girls he provided to Jimmy Savile, but we know now he was one of the people who provided large amounts of children to Jimmy Savile. This is a fact. That alone should be enough to condemn this guy at the early age of 25. But he might tell you, well, you know what? Jesus forgives. It's all good. He's a complete and utter liar. He doesn't have any sense of compassion, even though he tries to come off as this warm and fuzzy compassion. When he was asked about the damage that he was doing playing to the fantasies of weak, vulnerable people, he said he didn't care. He plays to the stupid. He doesn't care about their mental health. He plays to their fantasies. He says that's their problem. He lied about being given cufflinks by Donald Trump. He said he was given a set of cufflinks by Donald Trump. Turns out that these cufflinks were cufflinks that you could buy in the White House gift shop, and you could purchase them on eBay for about 56 pounds. He's claiming to have CIA links. He's claiming to be CIA, but he does not claim to be an operative. Now, I am a CIA contractor, but I'm also an NSA contractor. Technically, that's what he was. But what was his duties that he was contracting? Money laundering, currency exchange, and human trafficking at the same time. He likes to say that Robert David Steele is one of his CIA contacts. We know he's a fake and a fraud and a shill. He also says he has two other people that are still in the CIA that feed him information. These are somehow good guys embedded in this so-called evil institution that Donald Trump said was so evil that President Kennedy tried to dismantle before he was killed by the very same mafia that Trump works for, and this guy probably works for too. He thinks JFK Jr. is alive. He actually comes off as if he believes that. And he's obviously trying to get other people to believe that too. He claims to have met Osama bin Laden. He said he's a, quote, nice guy, a lovely man who died of old age, and they killed a body double. I believe that. One of his biggest fuck-ups, pardon my French, was when he quoted an article that came out in 2017. It's a Benjamin Fulford update from a publication or internet thing called Stillness in the Storm. This came out in 2017, and it was the story about how the Marines had landed in Langley and had raided the CIA headquarters and confiscated all sorts of documents and hard drives and arrested people and all this sort of thing. I remember when that happened back in 2017, or at least they say it happened. Well, on January 18th, 2021, he came out on his show reading this story, this Benjamin Fulford story, as if it had just happened. He claimed it was new intelligence that was coming out. He claimed that $35 trillion was recovered from the CIA. Do you guys know how much $35 trillion is? That's more than our national debt. It's more than our deficit. We could pay off our debt with that and have money left over to give everybody a real stimulus check. It's just crazy. One of the people that he has with him on his program all the time is this guy, Simon Parkes. Who the hell is Simon Parkes? Well, he's a former counselor from some little itty-bitty podunk town, Whitby, I think it is, in the UK. And he's a driving instructor. But he also claims to be a UFO contactee. And he sells, I mean, my God, he's all about his experiences dealing with grays and all this nonsense. Well, whether or not that's true, what he does do, at least for Charlie Ward, is he provides the so-called 5G protection USB stick, something you plug into a power source, a little USB stick, and it's going to emit some sort of, I guess, I don't know what, scalar signal to defeat the who knows what, the EMF and the 5G EMF specifically. Yeah, that's a good one. They just threw those letters on there to make it sound more useful. But this is a bit of the crap that Charlie is selling. If you go to his web page and you look at the My Stuff section, he's got 5 things that he sells: his Insiders Club, his book, some Patriots Unite thing that he doesn't explain what that is, a 5G radiation protection gear, which is of course this thing that comes from a Simon Parkes idiot, and then he's got something he calls a wellness solution, which I assume is something like what Alex Jones does, selling some gimmicky whale or what is it, snake oil. But the point is that right there should tell you it's snake oil. The guy is selling this UFO protection or 5G protection from a UFO nut. It was only recently that he got caught as a complete idiot when he came out and said that the inauguration of Biden was fake and it was a pre-recorded event. It didn't happen. And he actually went and played a recording of Biden being inaugurated from when he was vice president 8 years previously under Obama. Of course, he had to come out and say that he got duped and all that. But, I mean, come on. This is how good this guy's information is. One of the worst things this guy does, and again, this is the nature of the con man, snake oil salesman that he is he's pushing this Jassara, get-rich-quick free lunch, everybody's going to get $2 million stimulus check bullshit. Here's the thing. There is no free lunch. It's not real. But what he does is he's out there pushing gold. He's pushing silver. He's getting people, he's promoting way overinflated Forex trading companies, which are supposedly providing futures on bullion at extremely inflated prices. And he'll come right out and say, I am not a advisor. I am not a financial advisor. I am not a credible source for this advice. However, I'm just telling you what I have done in the past. That is his disclaimer when he's hawking this bullshit. But here's the thing. He's trying to suggest that if you are going to cash in on this so-called economic financial reset, that somehow you, because you're so greedy, can get ahead and be a little bit richer than everyone else when we're all getting our equalization checks by somehow investing in gold, because somehow the gold is going to be part of the currency and we're going to have a gold-based currency. And this is what he's suggesting NESARA is all about. And as we all know, the one that has the gold is the one that makes the rules. That's the golden rule. And bottom line is, you don't have any gold. I don't have any gold. The enemy is the one with all the gold. The Rothschilds have the gold. The Chinese have the gold. The fucking Gettys have got the gold. We don't have the gold. So why is he telling you that you need to buy gold? And not even real gold, but inflated futures. Something wrong. And not only that, one of the things he's most famous for promoting is the damn dinar, the Iraqi dinar. He's got one of these con men hucksters that he has on his program all the time, this guy Nicholas Veneman, or whatever it is. I don't know what the hell. He's got this nice British accent. But the bottom line is he is also pushing bullshit dinar sales. And here's the type of thing you can buy. You could get, 10,000 Iraqi dinars for 65 pounds, or 100,000 Iraqi dinars for 300 pounds. I don't know what that is in American. I think it's pretty close to. But the point is what does the Iraqi dinar have to do with the so-called global reset, which involves this redistribution of money taken from the evil ones? It's playing to greed. But, again, this is coming from a guy that runs a company called Currency Exchange, and their slogan is travel money delivered to your door, worldwide shipping. What else do you think they're delivering to your door, worldwide shipping? The Daily Mail promoted Charlie Ward as a Q leader. They also made fun of the whole Q movement because people like Charlie Ward were using it to hawk gold coin sales, and that it was no more than a Satan-worshiping conspiracy. So, if you have anything to do with Q, thanks to this notoriety of Charlie Ward, not only are you a Satan-worshiping conspiracy theorist, but you are also promoting gold coin sales, and you think that hoarding gold is somehow a good thing. This is the image that he's creating for us. And again, why is the Daily Mail even talking about Charlie Ward? They're not talking about anybody else, and yet they're coming along and giving this guy this ridiculous exposure, talking about how he's pushing gold. Why is the Daily Mail talking about Charlie Ward? Very simple. Jack Kidd. It's his Kidd connection. You'll also notice that in all of the video content that he puts out, you can't comment on it. All the commenting is turned off. He's on the top of all the charts. If you look at the demographics for all of his stuff, if you go to BitChute, the video service, you're going to see that Charlie Ward videos are number one. Why is that? Why are there so many Charlie Ward groups, members in Telegram? Why do all of these alternative media, these so-called bastions of conservative freedom, why do they all seem to be open territory for the likes of Charlie, and yet things like Occupy the Getty struggle? Why does he still have a media presence on YouTube and all these other platforms, and how did he manage to get all those hundreds of thousands of hits when everyone else is getting shut down? What is it? He has an open door. Who is giving him the open door? Who runs all these tech companies? We already know. The Rothschild Khazarian Mafia. They run all of these companies. Who's Charlie best friends with? How fucking close can he be to the Rothschilds? It's not 6 degrees of separation. They hang out at parties together. Suzanne Maxwell, do you think it's just an accident? No, it's not just an accident. He says Q follows him. Q didn't follow him. Q created him. Who is Q? NSA. What is his job? His job is to steal the narrative by pumping out hopium. And he's got you all chugging the Kool-Aid. Hardcore. Well, there's a couple other things that I want to mention really quick. And that is that this idiot, Gregory Hallett, he also calls himself the Christ. Now, right away, I take a great offense at that. And I take also great offense at him being a pretender to the crown. And I wonder, the slick operation that put together Charlie Ward is clearly financed completely and controlled by the opposition. In this case, the highest levels of opposition, none other than the Rothschilds. Not just the Rothschild-Khazarian Mafia, which encompasses Mossad and everything else, but the actual Rothschilds. We are not just tracing it to some obscure mafia member like Donald Trump. We're tracing it right back to living members of the family who are directly, personally, humanly involved in the effort to discredit the Occupy the Getty movement by coming out of nowhere and coming out with this guy, Charlie Ward. Now, Charlie Ward's book was introduced December 21st, 2020. I hope I got that right, but the point is that it just came out of nowhere. My book came out 8 years ago. His book just came out. He is a very, very slickly, glossy packaged product that was chosen and created. Now, do you think he chose this? No. I think he got a tap on the shoulder and somebody said, Charlie, you've been enjoying your life. You got your Turkish trophy wife here in your lavish estate here in Spain. Guess what? Time for you to become the face of Q and the face of the opposition to occupy the Getty. And that's all he is. The man clearly trafficked humans. He admitted to doing the exact same thing when he said he provided humans to Seville. He has had human trafficking victims on his show. He had a girl named Sabrina on his show with another woman talking about human trafficking, and she flat out said she recognized his face from being on one of the plane flights when she was being trafficked. And she said that as soon as she heard his voice, she knew it was him. And yet she would not come out and say, because she was in awe of being in his presence. And what did he say to her? He said, they will hide right in front of your face. Is that not arrogance? He flat out said to a woman that was trafficked as a child in his presence in one of his private jets, and he said, I am hiding right in front of your face. And that's what these people do. They're hiding right in front of your face. And I'm very disgusted that so many of you cannot see that. Now, before I move on, I also want to bring up the story about one of the little girls that was raped by Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, this particular woman, she wasn't just some woman that was pulled off the streets to become a model or something like this. She was actually recruited by Epstein from a college in New York, an art school, to come and live and be his live-in artist. She's the one responsible for these crazy paintings of Bill Clinton and whatever, and all these crazy paintings that Epstein asked for. He liked to have paintings of his victims, the young girls, done, portraits, and he would hang them all over his various properties across the country and the world. And she said that when she was hired, that she was brought into a room and Trump was there. And she thought he was disgusting because he was leering at her and salivating and acting like he couldn't wait to get his hands on her. And Epstein had to restrain him, say, no, this one's not for you, just wait. And then he said, you go in the other room. And he went in the other room and there was another girl in there waiting for him. That was her experience with Trump. And eventually, of course, Epstein did go and rape her, but he said that it wasn't just Epstein raping her, it was also Ghislaine Maxwell raping her. But she also said that the time she spent with Epstein, being his house portrait painter, that she witnessed Trump there very, very often, and he was there with his first wife, Ivana, the skier. And he said that Ghislaine Maxwell and Ivana were best of friends, and that they would always go out together, and that when Ivana and Ghislaine went out, that Epstein and Trump went out. So there you go. I'm just going to leave it at that right now. We're going to come back. But again, I'm disgusted by this, and it's kind of, again, it's overwhelming for me because when I first discovered this information about Charlie Ward, I had no clue. And I certainly do not have any interest in destroying him for the sake of monetary gain. The man's wealthy. I couldn't hurt him enough to make his money go away. But he knows he's wicked, and he knows he's evil, and he knows that if he doesn't do what he's told and promote these lies and use his face and his salesman and his ability. I mean, my God, remember, we're talking timeshare salesman. He is going to sell the shit with a friendly face, and he's going to lie to you and take your money. Sounds a lot like Donald Trump, doesn't it? Well, you know what? I thought Donald Trump was a bad pedophile. I thought Donald Trump was a bad mafioso and money launderer and all of that. But you know what? This guy's right up there. He certainly followed in the footsteps when he left his church of his doppelganger, Aleister Crowley. They practically look alike. His methodology of using children and sweetness to endear him to you reeks of satanic indoctrination. He's clearly all about the money. He's always been all about the money. And he only appeals to greed. He has always only appealed to greed. And it's unfortunate because all of the most evil people, even Felix Sater, Donald Trump's famous Russian connection, said that his secret weapon was greed. And obviously Charlie, I'm just Charlie, his secret weapon is also greed. And if he really needs that extra $5,000 a month to be giving you guys his information, that's just arrogance. That's not even greed at this point. That's just arrogance. And those of you that actually give him the money, it's insane. Now, when I came out with this information about him, I had people freaking out, people saying that I was now bashing Charlie. One intellectual said that I was retarded. Now, I'm not exactly sure what he was saying I was retarded for, but I think it had something to do with my calling Charlie Ward a money launderer, a Satanist, and a pedophile, and a human trafficker, all of these things. So if you think Charlie Ward did not fly planes of money, planesfuls of money from all over the world, from wealthy people to Jeffrey Epstein for the purpose of laundering money for billionaire clients, because that's exactly what he did. He was clearly hooked up to Ghislaine Maxwell. He was clearly hooked up to the operation going on with Jeffrey Epstein. And maybe he was a lowly delivery boy, but he wasn't just any lowly delivery boy. And you know damn well they weren't just moving cash, they were moving children. All right? So like Charlie says, they're going to be hiding right in front of your face. Not only is he hiding right in front of your face, this guy is the most heinous example of the enemy that we have seen that had the gall and arrogance to actually hide right in front of our faces. And it's incredible. It's incredible that he would actually have so much recorded evidence of him admitting to doing all these heinous things. How in the hell could he even think that he could get away with this? This is incredible arrogance. But Donald Trump thought he could get away with it too. And so far he has. And maybe the reason is because these guys are desperate, and maybe the reason is because they are going to do anything they can right now to save their asses, because we're moving forward. Occupy the Getty is almost here. And I think after tonight, I think you're going to see a lot of the people that have been clamoring around this guy are going to start dropping off, because Charlie Ward just got the Stephen Kelly treatment. And I'm officially condemning him, and I'm officially calling him out. Once again, Charlie, you are a pedophile. You are a money launderer. You are a human trafficker. You're the worst of the worst. And with that, we're going to take a break. See you guys on the flip side. Okay, thank you so much. Bear with me. We're having issues, but why should I be surprised? I had to reboot my server just before the show. That was where that lag was at the beginning of the show, just to get the Skype working. So I would suspect that there are agents of the Rothschilds that don't want me doing the show tonight. But I do want to welcome all of you that are out there listening. Of course, there's quite a few people from Ascension Radio and our regular listeners, Cypress, Texas. I see you, Grants Pacific. I try to drag RD in here. We don't have a lot of time left. It's only 20 minutes before the end of the show. But I do want to once again point out that if you guys aren't part of the Telegram group, I need you to get in there. It's really important to help me push this stuff. Also, start spamming the heck out of these memes. And I want to thank my associates for the hard work they're doing, and let them know that, you know, there's going to be a lot more to come. What else? Oh, also, Laura, if you're listening, thank you for the Easter present. I got a book that was a lot of fun today that I'm kind of excited about, but appreciate that. Thank you so much. And again, I'm just going to try to drag RD in here really quick. And Isabel, if she wants to say something, is welcome to, of course, and then we'll get out of here, and hopefully I'll have a fun beer to celebrate my attack on, an hour and 30 minutes of spewing vitriol in the direction of Charlie. Anyway, all right, so how did I do? Did I leave anything out did I leave any important Charlie facts out here? What did I forget? I don't think you're a big Charlie follower. Is anybody here a Charlie follower? Isabel, you follow Charlie at all? We got a good hour and a half of Charlie info out. And I just want to say in closing real quick, even if this does get edited, that Charlie, I know you're probably listening, or you might be ignoring, or you're going to have people telling you what I said, but I want to let you know that this bullshit with threatening to send people over to screw someone up and fuck somebody up is not going to work with me, motherfucker. I'm going to come after your ass, okay? You're going to get to meet some Jedi bitch. Okay? I don't need to go to Spain. And if I did want to go to Spain, I've got plenty of fucking connections in Spain, because Spain was where I distributed all my damn lasers and weapons to the rest of the fucking world from, fool. And I worked for the GEO. Maybe you've heard of them. That's Spanish SWAT. So guess what? I have some killers that work for me over in Spain, so don't act like you are untouchable, Mr. fucking bald ass. All right? So with that, I'm going to let you go. I hope you enjoyed your April Fool's Day, but this is for real. This guy is scum, and he has been playing you all for a fool for a long time. With that, I'll see you all hopefully next week, and I hope you enjoyed the show and help me to light a fire under these fuckers, because we're going to end this stuff real soon. But once again, my name is Stephen D. Kelly. This is Truth Cat Radio. We are www.truthcatradio.com, and our show's on every Thursday night, and you can see this, you can listen to us again looped on the station, and we'll have it up on YouTube, we'll have it up everywhere, all over the place, and if you do see it, please share the hell out of it, and please get it in front of these 300,000 or 7 million people, or whoever knows how many people is that are following Charlie Ward, because we can't tolerate this crap any longer, all right? So help me out with that. I'll see y'all next week, okay? Good night, God bless, adios, and goodbye.